I am Hikaru Tanaka, and I will be presenting on flame retardants. The objective of the presentation would be to further understand what flame retardants are, to explore the effects of flame retardants in the environment, and to investigate the effects of flame retardant exposure on IQ loss. These are our table of contents. There are 6 classes of chemicals used on consumer products, and today we will focus only on class 3, flame retardants.
I feel like I've heard flame retardants so many times.
Flame retardants, or FRs, are essentially chemicals to slow the growth of fire. They have been used in consumer and industrial products since the 1970s. FRs are used in furnishings, building and construction materials, textiles and fabrics, electronics, transportation products such as seat covers, etc. And given all these products, most people are exposed to flame retardant chemicals. These chemicals can get into the air, water, and soil during manufacture, use, and disposal. Flame retardants are not flame resistant. Flame retardants slow the growth of the possible fire. Flame resistant materials prevent ignition and are able to withstand extreme heat. Although many flame retardants have been removed from the market and are no longer produced, there are still some environmental concerns to take note of. The world consumption of FRs by region in 2019 is shown as follows. I do want one to note that even though Africa's and parts of Asia have quite low consumption at 2%, that could increase with time, especially considering the booming economies, which would lead to an increase in income and therefore a demand for these products. There are 4 key aspects, however, that make FRs quite concerning. 1, they are persistent. A lot of these chemicals do not break down easily and remain in the environment, continuing to expose us to chemicals years after they have been phased out. 2, they bioaccumulate, essentially building up in animals and people as you go up the food chain. 3, they are mobile. Traveling and trade has made it easier for these chemicals to travel long distances. And finally, they are quite toxic, known to cause adverse health effects in animals and humans. Due to these impacts, it has resulted in some of them being added to the Stockholm Convention, thus banning several organohalogens. The European Union has also banned halogenated FRs, and different countries have different restrictions. In the USA, more than a dozen states have adopted legislation that restricts the use of FRs in children's toys, but none of these chemicals are banned federally. Children are at the greatest risk of FR exposure than adults due to hand-to-mouth behavior and proximity to the floor during their developmental years.
I just started playing.
Firefighters are also at the greatest risk and are therefore advocates against FRs, given that the number 1 killer of firefighters is cancer due to chemical exposure faced in the line of duty due to the toxic fumes and smoke generated during combustion. There are hundreds of different kinds that are categorized based on chemical structure and properties. In general, they are grouped based on whether they have halogens such as bromine and chlorine, phosphorus, nitrogen, and metals. Halogenated FRs are mainly used to protect many types of plastics. These include polybrominated diphenyl ethers, PBDEs, tetrabromobisphenol A, TBBPA, hexabromocyclododecane, HBCD. This pie chart shows the world consumption of some types. In 2019, aluminium trihydroxides, organophosphorus compounds, and brominated compounds had the highest consumption among the different FR types at 38%, 18%, and 17% respectively. Dr. Arlene Bloom, a chemist from the University of California, Berkeley, was the first to show that brominated tris of FR in children's pajamas was seeping into their bodies through their skin and had the ability to cause cancer. Her research led regulators to quickly ban that chemical from pajamas. However, the following year, manufacturers just switched to a different chemical known as chlorinated tris, which was just as cancerous. It was through Dr. Bloom's research that we came to understand that toddlers were known to have 3 times flame retardant levels than their parents, given their consumption of breast milk, which led to bioaccumulation of FRs, and via hand-to-mouth contact when they crawled around on floors. Cats, on the other hand, had 10 to 100 times more FRs in their system than in people, given their grooming habit. According to research published in 2011 by Dr. Stapleton and Dr. Bloom, 80% of baby products tested positive for FRs, and the subsequent year, 85% of 100 couches also tested positive. This research indicated that the family sofa was the major source of exposure, and that the most detected flame retardant was chlorinated tris. In 2017, Dr. Stapleton showed that the urine of toddlers was 15 times more concentrated with FRs than their mothers. Possible sources: breast milk and hand-to-mouth contact after crawling. Having more baby products also was associated with higher concentrations of FRs in the toddler system. A 2020 study compared the effects of 4 chemicals, lead, mercury, pesticides, and FRs, on neurodevelopment of children from 2001 to 2016. Dr. Trasande showed that children are exposed to endocrine disrupting chemicals in utero and early childhood. Figure 4 shows a line graph showing the IQ points lost annually in millions from 2001 to 2016 for 4 chemicals. Polybrominated diphenyl ethers, PBDEs, which are brominated flame retardants, were the greatest contributor to IQ loss and intellectual disability, resulting in a total of 80 million IQ points lost over the study period. Figure 5 shows a bar chart comparing the economic cost of the respective IQ loss caused by the 4 chemicals. This study found that there is an economic cost to childhood brain damage. Dr. Trasande said that each individual IQ point is worth roughly 2% of a child's lifetime economic productivity. So if a child could potentially make $1 million over the course of their lifetime, they would lose $20,000 for every IQ point lost. According to the research, IQ loss due to these 4 chemicals combined cost the US around $6 trillion from 2001 to 2016, and it's evident that PBDEs contributed the greatest economic loss. Dr. Trasande emphasizes that there is no safe level of lead exposure, and that is the same for FRs as well. To reduce exposure, use a high-efficiency particulate air filter to reduce dust exposure. Wash hands frequently. Frequently open windows to let chemicals escape. In summary, flame retardants are chemicals that slow the growth of fires. Various flame retardants, especially halogenated types, pose a huge health risk, such as increasing the risk of cancer and neurodevelopmental issues. Brominated flame retardants are one of the biggest contributors to IQ loss and intellectual disability in growing children. Flame retardants are loosely regulated despite environmental and health concerns. Given all the consumer industrial products used daily, most people have some level of FRs in their system, but toddlers have significantly higher concentration of FRs in their system. It's important to reduce not only the dose of exposure, but the frequency and duration of exposure by airing our rooms often.
Jesus. I want the energy. Anything.